The white hot sun baked the clay pastel colored houses. It was hard to miss the bright, blinding ball of light that we called the sun in the morning. It burst through my curtains, illuminating my room. My window was open from the night before, because in Cuba it gets hotter at night, so I often open the window so I don't sweat to death. I got out of my white metal wired bed with small flowers and big enough to fit in my hand. I walked over to the window, pulling the teal and blue highlighted curtains aside, and I felt a cool breeze that caused the curtains to dance around me, and it brushed my chocolate brown hair out of my face. The sun was bright and warmed up my olive-colored skin, and I started to drift off into the fantasy worlds that I create, worlds with dragons, mermaids, magic necklaces, witches, and wizards. I have such high expectations for reality because I read too much. I wish I could be a part of these fictional worlds. I imagine myself running along the beach with my friends and swimming. Amara, my mother called from the kitchens downstairs, disrupting my fantasy. Come and get breakfast. Coming, I called. I closed my window, cutting off the songful wind that caused the once dancing curtains to stop their flowing dance. I walked slow and zombie-like to my small white wicker desk, covered with makeup pictures of me and my friends, a CD player, and song albums in CD forms, and my brush. I picked up my brush and ran it through my thick, tangled hair. I threw on my favorite black shirt with a white sugar colored with an assortment of neon colors, flowers, and abstract designs. I headed towards a hallway decorated with family photos from when me and my sister Carmen and my parents went on family vacations. When I look back at the photos, I can see the move, and I passed a photo that dated back to when I was only 5, when me and Carmen would break into Mother's makeup bag and smother makeup on each other, and we looked ridiculous. I remember Mother yelling at us, but Father would always laugh and say we looked ghoulish. I don't blame him. We did look like something out of a horror film from the cinema. In my favorite photo, Carmen put my hair up in messy pigtails, and we walked around the house like we were queens. We wore red and white dresses with flowers around, with red and white dresses with flowers all around, and Mother's heeled shoes. Every few steps we would take, we'll topple over and blame it on the non-existent presents. I was a weird child, and I haven't changed.
Walking down the living room that was joined with the kitchen, everybody was relaxing on the couch. The bacon and eggs will be ready in a few, Mama said as I sat down on one of the lumpy sofas in the living room. Father and Uncle were chatting about politics, and Mama was in the kitchen with Auntie talking about their kids and their greatest achievements. I was about to go get up when my Uncle Pedro cursed. He was flipping through the channels on the TV. He saw that the news reporter was saying how Fidel Castro won the election. How in the world would Fidel Castro have won? I don't believe it! He yelled angrily. Everybody paused mid-conversation. No one except the news reporter talked. His voice broke the silence that hung around my family like an eerie frog around a lake. My parents sat in shock, as everybody else did. The children were told to go play somewhere else while they talked. My family always had a preference on who should have won, but I never heard about it until now. A week passed, then a year, then another. Me now being 15, I understood a lot more about politics in the world, though I still really heard about it at home. On one hot, sticky morning, I was getting ready for my job, listening to music while I prepared. I went to the kitchen and grabbed myself a mango and sat down in the living room. When I looked at the newspaper, there was a news segment about riots in Havana. The report mentioned how nearly 200 people got sent to prison. I flipped to another page and finished my fruit. On my way to work, there was a group of people holding signs that were about Castro. I saw my friend and started a conversation. Why are you out here, doing this? I asked. She explained to me about the riots and why it's dangerous, and how she felt needed to stand out. I couldn't understand why she'd rather risk her life and all that. But all of a sudden, sirens blared, cussing me and others expecting to jump. The police showed up. I watched as a man gets cuffed and then shot. Danielle screamed. She tried to run towards him, but I held her back to force her away from running. As we were running, we heard more screams and shots, tears running down my face as I was running, barely breathing. Danielle fell, and I pulled her up. We ran until we reached my house. When we did, I fell through the front door and into the living room and explained, there was a guy and a gun and police and sirens and he got shot. I was hysterical. Danielle just sat against the wall crying, without sobs. Only then did I realize that the man was her father. I sat down next to her. I didn't really know what to say. What if I were to say something that hurt her more? Then it'd be like pouring salt into an open wound. When I calmed down, officers showed up at the door with guns and other weapons. My father answered the door and was saying how I was just trying to go to work and that we are Castro supporters. Anger pooled inside of me. An officer saw her take a protester when she ran off, the policeman said. There's no one except my son, daughter, and wife in this house. We shoved Danielle in a laundry pile and covered her with clothes. As the policeman came to the house to search, we all sat together in the living room while they searched. When they came to pile, they overlooked it. Relief was over me. They went to the next room. They looked in my room, my sister's room, and my parents' room. They were about to leave when one officer wanted to double check if those of the closets when he tripped into the laundry pile. He stood as fast and took out his gun. Daniel tripped him and got his gun and pointed it at him. My mother ran around grabbing things like blankets, food, water bottles, and little blow-up raft, money, and clothes for all of us. I then ran to grab some of my stuff, as did my sister. Then we heard a shot. There was a pause, just like the one that day Castro won control of Cuba. I watched Danielle crumple down to the floor. I knew this country was in trouble. My family jumped in the car and drove off without a trail. Where are we going? My sister asked repeatedly.
Next day, I wake up and pack all my things and walk stealthily to Havana. We didn't want to risk being heard, let alone being shot by any Castro supporters. I feel my bare feet clapping against the dry, hot, humid pavement. Father sets the boat in the chilling waters of the Caribbean Sea. I get on the boat. Father starts to push out to sea. Jumping in the boat, he was knee-deep in the light, translucent waters. We were headed to Miami, Florida, or as Father calls it, Little Havana. As we get further out to sea, I see the shoreline of Havana getting smaller and smaller until it looks like the horizon swallowed Cuba whole. The boat ride felt like years of just drifting of an endless blue sea. The deeper we got out, the darker the blue ocean became. I felt hopeless. I thought we'll be out on the ocean for all eternity, until on the peak of the horizon, land was in sight. We are getting closer and closer to the land. Excitement wraps around me. We finally pull to the dock. I step onto the warm, weather-beat wooden dock. It's my first step in U.S. territory. I grab my stuff and walk down the hot pavement. The U.S. is very nice, government-wise, compared to Cuba. It has more fancy, tall buildings with long names and houses not made of clay or pastel colors. I see people just like me, Cubans walking around. But in the mix of Cubans, I see Americans. The Americans were acting all cool as if they were better than me.
Me and my family moved into a small apartment in Little Havana, Florida. Me and Carmen have to share a room. Back in Cuba, I had my own room. It was a big, spacious room with teal and blue highlighted curtains that danced in the wind. I missed my white wicker desk. That was all left behind. Little Havana may look like the Havana I grew up knowing, but one thing is for sure. It wasn't as lively as the Havana I grew up knowing. I felt abstract, living in the somewhat carbon copy of Havana. It looks like I'll just have to adjust to the new environment and the new language. The only language I was raised to talk in was Spanish. We just have to make the most of it, Mother sighed. I could tell she missed the real Havana. Mother wasn't the only one. Father can't stand trying to learn English. He had a high-paying job in Cuba, and now he and Mother can't find anything. Tomorrow, me and Carmen will go to school for the first time in America. Mother and Father are going to search for jobs. School was torturous. I couldn't understand what the people were saying. Everywhere I went, I was lost. I prayed that things would get better. My parents finally found jobs. My mom found one at a farm out of town, and my dad found one as a truck driver for UPS. As the year went on, I got better at English, and I was almost good enough to get placed in the classes with other students. My dad started college, and my mom got a better job as a waitress at Applebee's.
What if you were an immigrant? No money or car. Would you like to be forced out of your home? Well, one thing that could help Cuban American immigrants is by having an organization that gives them job opportunities, such as hiring them for farming or other jobs that no one else wants and giving them a head start on their new life. If Americans just shut immigrants out, then Cubans may be racist towards Americans because of the way they treat them. And it could just be a back and forth thing. If Americans opened up to Cubans and gave them jobs and places to stay, then the Cuban American relationship would improve.